All right, guys, we are back with roundtable discussion number 2. I was driving in the car this week, and I thought it would be a really cool series that we're going to break down into individual series for you guys. But basically, when it comes to coaching, a lot of our job is problem solving. So this series that we're going to get into is what to do when things go wrong. The first topic that we're going to talk about and what the next 4 videos is going to be about is specifically about aspects of training. And then we're going to go into aspects of diet, aspects of contest prep, and then we have mental aspects of, what goes wrong when things go wrong in terms of our external variables. How do we handle that mentally? So we're going to dive into 4 impactful topics today, specifically related to training. Nick's going to start us off with topic number 1, which is going to be in the environment of those of you that log training. You have a specific goal for that day. How do you address the environment, the situation when you don't hit a rep goal? What do you do? How do you surpass that? So let's jump into it.
So it's the biggest, most unfortunate part, or the most unfortunate side effect of being very married to a logbook. Logbook is going to be the biggest thing that we're going to need to look at, or at least knowing what your general numbers are progressing over time, knowing you have a standard and a basis to work from, instead of just walking in and doing whatever you want on the day that you show up. Do that for too long, you don't really have any basis of a foundation to start building more and more progressive reps, sets, load over time.
That's me.
You don't really know. Yeah, I'm pointing at you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I didn't look at you the whole time for that. So,
I know.
But unfortunately, it's a double-edged sword. So looking at it as always having something to look off of and have another step to move forward is the positive side. The negative side is that if you start getting way too married to the fact that you need to get a load progression or a rep total progression or a set progression every single time that you train, you're going to end up shooting yourself in the foot. So what happens when that goes wrong and you start getting too married to getting a progression every single time you train? There ends up being way too much emphasis on trying to just push yourself beyond the means that you currently have. When you start pushing yourself beyond the means way too far, what I call crossing the red line, cross the red line way too many times, and then your red line starts to take a dip. And instead of it being at your real 100% capacity of ability, it starts dropping to 90, 80, 70, 60. And then we start getting to the point where you can't perform for anything anymore. And you're starting to make compensations to your movement patterns, the way that you go about things. And then by the time that you get to the point where it's already gone too far, you're looking at having to take serious time off to get back to it, reset your mental, reset your physical, and actually be able to come back and do it again and get anywhere near what your best performance would have been if you hadn't gone down that path in the first place. So always walking in and thinking about making another progression in any way that's tangible at the time is always helpful. Taking it way too personal when something does go wrong and you miss it is where you start falling down the rabbit hole that things go wrong.
Yeah, it's a big mind game.
Yeah.
One of the things that I try to really encourage people with off the bat, because I'm huge on making training quantifiable, but within my athletes, one of the first things I say to them is that, we can't always expect linear progression, because if that's the case, we'd be walking around at 600 pounds. Our human capabilities would be exponentially bigger than what they are. So we all have an end game with this. And like Nick said, one of the most crucial things I think in terms of when you miss a set that you expect to hit, there's 2 components to it. I think the mental component of being aware to drive progress is always a good thing. But when that set is missed, I think you need to be able to pull back and analyze, and not just be so in the moment of that set, but now it's about linking together one successful workout to the next, not just burying yourself in this workout to then have a compounding effect over multiple workouts, multiple weeks. If you don't catch this, I talk a lot about, accumulating fatigue within training cycles, and if you don't catch this early on, we all have one bad day. I think it's funny, and this is what I want to talk about during contest prep, but one bad day in the off season we just write off as a bad day. One bad day during a contest prep, we're throwing the flags our whole plan is wrong, when in reality it's not.
Right.
But when you have multiple compounding bad days, that's when you really need to assess the plan, that you might be pushing too much, volume requirements might be too high, and then you're in trouble.
I think, dude, I want to talk about a bad day in prep. You bring up a great point, because I know you hear it all the time. It's common. A guy or a girl will miss one meal or eat one thing they're not supposed to, and they text me, and they're 13 weeks out. And they're like, am I going to lose now?
Yeah.
I ate, a graham cracker. I'm so sorry. It'll never happen again. I blew it. And it's you're so right. That's a great point. Just keep moving.
Yeah,
the training
and then
moving.
too, even on the training aspect with bad days, like you're gonna have bad days during prep.
Yeah.
It's how you respond to that. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, you're in a deficit. You're in a prolonged deficit. Your energy requirements are way lower in terms of what your body's truly capable of, and yet you're pushing it to a threshold that it's not been to yet.
Yeah. I want to ask you guys something. When you're talking about the way I train versus what you do, and I have no type of gauge for progression, I think that so I have my opinion on it, but I want to hear what you think and what you think about someone that's at my level or higher. Do you think that's a big deal or not a big deal? I'm saying, like, training how I train. I don't care. I don't have strength. I don't want to get too much into it because we're going to talk about it in a minute, but I don't have any strength goals or anything like that. Do you think that's limiting me, or do you think it's not?
So,
do you think I can keep growing?
In my opinion, I think what matters most is if you want to call it RPE scale, or if you want to call it sets in reserve. I think that's the most important factor.
Yeah.
And because there was a time in my life where I traveled 3 out of 4 weekends of the contest prep season, but yet I still made progress. So I was never in set gyms. I was never in set barbells, in terms of brands, but yet I still made progress. So within, like, this overall plan, rather than being consumed by set variables within the plan, I was just consumed by maximizing effort within a set. And I think if you're maximizing effort within a set, regardless of load or volume, repetition within that set, you still can make progress.
Yeah, that's what I believe too. And I'll get into that when we move on. But what's your opinion?
As a small counter, because that's still absolutely true, I'd like to make a little bit of a distinction between effort and capacity. So when we think about how we're training and training hard, like, you train hard,
Yeah.
but you're giving it 100% effort within the capabilities that you have within the parameters of the training sessions you do.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is you have two things: your full 100% capacity of what you could possibly do, and then what you give your 100% effort to within the session you planned.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were trying to make 100% effort out of everything you decided to do, that's what you're doing. You're giving 100% effort to everything you are doing, but what you are doing is changing so frequently, and it's moving on shifting targets, that you don't really have any tangible progressions to find where your 100% capacity would be if you wanted to give your 100% effort to that.
Yeah.
And now you're making progress still, and I'm
yeah.
sure you can, giving 100% effort, hitting shifting targets. But if you have solid, stable targets that you know you're guiding yourself towards your 100% capacity of what you could do, and within the parameters of whatever training that you built, if you gave 100% effort to something that was 100% of your possible capacity, you'd be making more progress than just giving 100% effort to something that's hitting your 60% capacity,
Yeah.
which likely is.
And that's kind of
probably
where
the case.
I've been at. I mean, I think that's a good thing to touch on too, because I think a lot of people get lost in doing different movements every single week. Mm-hmm. They're like, oh, I did that last week, so I need to do something different this week. Mm-hmm. And I fell into that for a while too. And then I've definitely got away from that the last few years. Mm-hmm. I'm going back to just using movements that I know work. Mm-hmm. I mean, we talked about it last night.
Yep.
So I do 100% agree with that too. Mm-hmm. People need to get out of that mindset of what's going to be my what's my chest workout for today. It's got to be completely different than what I did last week. That's simply not true.
Yep. Yep. And even then, also, to take it beyond that point, to say that you should also be looking at exercise in training in this way, trying to go laterally as far as you can, and shift your horizons going laterally, not just vertically. Yeah. So vertically is just getting really good at one thing.
Yeah.
Or deciding that, like, for a couple of the exercises that you do, you get really good at them because you know that they work for you.
Yeah.
But then everything else that could also train that muscle may be better if you have the ability or the confidence to do it. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason you don't, you take that off the table. You take that off the table, that's lateral distance you're not going, that's just vertical on the one that you are doing.
Yeah.
Maybe another lateral option is going to have more vertical runway for you, and you can make more total progression on there if you had taken out all the limiters that you have in place, whether it's mental, physical, functional, structural, making adjustments to whatever it needs to be for you to be able to do it. It may yield you a better result if you had that included somewhere, not to replace the things that you already know work, but to have as an adjunct and an option for something to move to when progressions start to slow on the other things that you know you can do.
Yeah. I also want to say, just because I train like this, I think that I would advocate, I think people can go by a logbook for like 10 years. before they, assuming they're injury free. I think you can use a logbook for at least 10 years before you get to a point where you can even do what I do.
Yeah.
10 years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, no, I agree.
At least.
Yeah.
So,
Going haphazardly and trying to train and figure out, like, that's the whole point of what we got to, even with you bringing this up, is that trying to shift between your targets and you don't have a real reason why that target is the one that you're shooting at is part of why that doesn't work for people that haven't been doing this for forever. So it can work for you because you know that, like, the things that you have gravitated to is what your options are. You know that you could take them to the grave,
yeah.
and you know what that is like.
Yeah.
So you know that your 100% effort is always there. And you've gotten through this so many times that you just know what exercises are going to give you the closest to your best capacity that you know is available to you, barring the things that stop you from doing all the other ones that you already bar. You know? So you have those options and you keep going through them. So you keep on refining your approach to doing those better. So you do continue forward. Where people that haven't been doing this for 10, 15 years, they're just throwing things at the wall and hoping it sticks, and they don't have enough knowledge of themselves or just general knowledge of training for them to know what is actually the best option for them. It's just what feels right at the time.